Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Soberful podcast. Hi, Chip. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. My name's Chip, and I'm good.
I was
Yeah,
just
I'm wearing a good
complimenting
colour. Just complimenting me
Mr.
on the colour.
Summers. If you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, and the rather fetching sweater he has on, and he told me, not only is it cashmere, it was picked out by his very stylish French wife.
Yes.
French women are so annoying. They're just like,
Whenever anybody says, "Oh, that looks nice,"
it's Heidi.
Heidi, who in the 26 years I've known her, I have never seen her look anything other than really stylish.
What?
Never
How
once.
did they learn it at school? What is it about the French?
She goes on holiday with an envelope of clothes and seems to wear a different outfit every night. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like in the genes or something.
Yeah.
It's very annoying.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about how do I know when it's time to stop drinking? And this was kind of from some conversations I was having with clients, and I thought, we should do a podcast on this because I think this is sort of like the $1 million question. And what I want to say is, like, when we start drinking, no one's goal is to get to a point of having a problem, right?
No.
We all think it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things, this is what I heard someone say the other day, is, well, obviously it got to be a problem, I'd stop, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. How do you know it's a problem? Because that is the insidiousness. That's it. Of it is, how do you define it as a problem? Because that is so murky and unclear.
Yeah.
How do you know? And I think what people think is, well, it's like when you're homeless. Or, like, they think it's like, when it's like...
The spectrum is so big that at one end you've got the homeless, drunk alcoholic.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's a whole spectrum to somebody who, as you said, they've got a home, they've got children, they've got a job, they're doing fine. So trying to get the one at one end of the spectrum to use terminology that makes them look like the other end of the spectrum is just beyond their capability. They just can't see it. Whenever you say the word alcoholic, the first thing that comes to people's minds is somebody sitting on a park bench. It never occurs to them that it's a housewife or a manager, your manager, or somebody you know. I mean, I think the other thing is the last person to know they have an alcohol problem is the one with the problem. They are the last people to know.
Yeah.
The family know, the children know, the people at work know, the people who you hang out with, who you thought you think you're fantastically entertaining and, one of the lads. No, behind your back, they're talking about, oh God, is he coming? He's going to drink more. You are always the last one to know. Everybody, and when I say to people, I said, do your children know that you've got a bit of a problem? Very much doubt it. I said, well, how old are they? Well, one's 23. I'd be very surprised if he knew.
They know at 8.
They know. God, they know younger than that. Yeah,
they know younger than that. Yeah.
So, you are the last person to know.
Yeah.
And, the old adage used to be, how do I know when I have an alcohol problem is when it costs more than money. That used to be the old easy kind of, when it costs more, when you've got, DUIs or you're being shunned socially, or there's problems, you're having lots of domestic problems at home, or you're not looking after your children properly, or all sorts of things. But when it costs more than money, it's quite a good one, actually, because it encapsulates all the things that go wrong, when you have a problem. I was actually, just before you came on, as we were talking, I just thought, how would you know when you had a problem with cornflakes? Do you have a problem with cornflakes? Are you starting to think about cornflakes at 3:00 in the afternoon? Very unlikely. If you go shopping and you forget the cornflakes, do you go back to get them, or do you just leave it for another time? Does you eating cornflakes cause chaos in the home? Does it upset the children or anything? No.
When you go to someone's house, do you kind of just have a little look that they've got enough cornflakes to go around?
Exactly. Yeah. we're getting low on cornflakes, we better get some more in, yeah. And the substance is completely different, obviously. But the thing is that with alcohol, you are thinking those things. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you are thinking about drinking in the evening. You are waking up on a Monday morning with a hangover. You aren't working as efficiently as you normally do. Domestic relationships and romantic relationships are probably really badly influenced by alcohol. Your interactions with your children are really badly influenced by alcohol. So it's something that often the trouble is, by the time somebody comes to see me, usually one member of their family, I should think 9 times out of 10, somebody has said, you need to go and see somebody. Very rarely is it, I have sat at home and I've thought, I've got a problem. I'm going to go and see somebody. It's usually at the behest of somebody else. And so you've got that to work out. And so it's up to you. So I normally read the criteria for alcohol dependency. And they go, they're about 11. So, and they say, well, I probably ticked about 6 of those. So that, and I said, well, actually, I've only got to tick 3 and I can diagnose you as alcohol dependent. They go, oh, geez, okay. And so I think people respond once they've got to somebody like me or you. I find they respond quite well to acknowledging they've got a problem in the privacy of that room. But the trouble is that for everyone that comes to see you or me, there are 10,000 who have got a problem, who don't acknowledge it, don't know, and have got wonderful ways of keeping people away from the subject. They'll leave the room. A classic defense is getting angry if it's mentioned. If you mention alcohol, I'm going to get angry and say, and
anger is scary for a lot of people.
Exactly, and it shuts them down.
It's a really good defense mechanism, is getting angry, because it does scare people and people don't want to go there.
Because there is something, the question is, when do I know that I have a problem? And the question is that there is, I don't know what it is, but there's something about the alcohol dependent mind that is able to dress up really negative things in a slightly more positive way. Classically, they can, I fell in the swimming pool at so-and-so's wedding, and for the other guests, it ruined the wedding, it spoiled everything. But for you, you've managed to dress it up as an exciting, entertaining after-dinner talk. We have a way of translating information or facts that happen, and by the time they get to our brain, they aren't as a result of alcohol. They're a result of something else completely different. And we are very good at tricking ourselves for a long, long time that we don't have a problem. It's because of, and there is some truth in this, it's because of my childhood, it's because of this or because of that. Although you don't actually hear many people say that, but we've got good ways of making excuses. I'm under an awful lot of pressure. I work really hard. You don't know how difficult it's been, whatever. We've got ways, internal ways of keeping the problem away.
One of the things that I was thinking about is how much, so there's several things, and what we're talking about is also denial and rationalizations, is how much our culture enables us to lie, right? And the big thing is humor, right? It is like, oh my God, right, and you did this and then you did that, and we were just, and everything is spun as like it was just hilarious. And everyone's laughing, and you've got that sort of feeling inside where it doesn't feel quite so funny, but you're like, and I feel culturally there's a lot of messaging, like hangovers, not a big deal. Like the mantra is always worth it. It was worth it, right?
Yeah.
You missed work, you hung over for 3 days, you're this, you're that, whatever, but it was worth it, right? I felt like that was said to me in many different ways a lot when I was drinking, and you're like, oh, okay, right. You just believe it. You kind of take it in, and there's so much that just sets it up that it's so hard to see. And I think the other thing is, for most people, I actually wasn't like this, but for most people, at the start of their drinking, it is manageable. I look back and I see that when I drank, I always binge drank. So I was never a polite glass of wine or two and that went home, really. I always wanted to have more. But for a lot of people at the beginning, they have a drink here and there, they get drunk in here and there, but it's all right, but and it sort of creeps up slowly. And they
Yeah,
keep thinking they can go back to managing it.
yeah.
And that's the holy grail. So we know from the research it takes 10 years from people first beginning to think that maybe they should cut down or do something about their drinking to actually stopping. So it's a decade of your life trying to figure out it's the holy grail, isn't it? Like, if I can
Yeah,
figure out the magic formula to manage
yeah.
it, and which is, I don't know if you see these on your social media, but these come up a lot on my social media, is there's always a new vitamin or elixir or something that means you can drink and don't have any of the hangovers the next day.
My God, I'm getting really tired of all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Also, we have, I don't know about what it's like in America, but in England, certainly in the male realm, it's not taken seriously. Oh, it had a bit of a heavy one last night, or you turn up for work looking wretched. Oh God, it looks like you had a heavy night last night, and it's made light of. And
Yeah.
actually, that person's turning up with a serious sort of physiological problem
Yeah.
because they've drunk too much, and nobody dares say, "You need to look about your drinking." They just go, "A bit of a heavy night, was it? Let's say, okay, well, never mind." And yet, that person's not going to be functioning at work until Tuesday morning at best, probably. And we have a way of, ladding. There's a lot of sort of, even amongst kind of quite respectable people, although this is a terribly sort of difficult, I'm not sure I should have phrased it that way, but there's a way of kind of making bad behavior, inappropriate remark. They kind of somehow make it funny and never mind. Oh, never mind. It's just a drink, something.
Yeah.
And I find the way that people are terrified of saying, "Man, you need to look at your drinking." It takes a really good friend to say, "You need to take a look at this because I've watched you for the last 6 months, and every morning on a Monday morning, you turn up absolutely wrecked. And on Friday, you leave at 12 o'clock. It takes a very brave person to say to somebody, especially within a domestic setting, when you're looking at speaking to your father, for instance, or speaking to your husband or wife and saying, I think you're drinking too much, because it is usually, at the end, it is usually a member of the family who has eventually broken and said, you've got to do something about that. But as you just said, they've probably put up with 5 to 10 years of really bad behavior before they've got it together to say, you've got to do something, otherwise I'm off, or whatever, or something. That can take, when you unpack it and you sort of find that the spouse has been worried about this for 5 years, or the children have been worried about it, or things have been going wrong it hasn't just happened that week that they arrive in front of you. It's been happening for a long time. And that was what I was going to say. And as I was talking, I loved the first 2 years of my using. I loved it. It was exciting. It was exhilarating. It was also coupled with a lot of really exciting sort of geopolitical things happening. It was just really great. And that's what I hanker after. That's what, when I got towards the end and it was living on the street, what I wanted to do was get back to those first 2 years. Everybody goes, what I want to do, I don't want to stop drinking. I want to get back to how it was at the beginning. And I go, well, good luck with that, because I don't think that's going to happen. And sometimes you have to use and they go, are you sure about that? I think I can probably do that. And so I usually sort of use an analogy like smoking. So you used to smoke 20 cigarettes a day. It took you 15 years to get up to 20 cigarettes a day. How long do you think it's going to take you you've given up now for a year. How long do you think it's going to take you to get back to 20 cigarettes a day if you start smoking again? You'll smoke one the first day, 3 or 4 the second, and within a week he'll be back to 20. And oh, yeah, I suppose when you talk about it like that, it is a bit like that. Everybody wants to be able to find control from somewhere to show I haven't got a problem with alcohol. I mean, a few things might have gone wrong, but I've got it under control. I can deal with it. I mean, that I can deal with it can go on for, as you said, years. And it usually takes the despair of somebody close to you, hopefully a good friend, or maybe it's the circumstances, some events happen, a DUI or something, that allows, sometimes it is something like a DUI, that allows members of the family to say, well, we've known this for years. We've known you've had a problem for years, but they won't just say it out of the blue. They need a kind of excuse to be able to just speak honestly.
One of the things I think that is hard for people is we've constructed a worldview, haven't we? And we believe that worldview is correct, more or less, and it's reinforced usually by the people around us. I mean, I remember when I stopped in, and it was a few months, and it was a British friend, was like, it's completely normal. Everyone goes out on a Saturday night and gets really messed up, and like every so often you end up in the cells or whatever. It's no big deal. Like what? Like, and I could see he was like, what? It's just like completely normal. And I was coming out of not totally out of it, but coming out of it going, yeah, no, I don't think it is completely normal to do that.
Yeah.
But I had a worldview that was reinforced by my entire peer group and my culture, because my drinking was in the 90s, which was the height of female
ladder stuff. Yeah.
All of the popular celebrities around me were beautiful, successful, and getting absolutely wrecked at the weekends.
Yep.
So that I had that worldview. This is normal. It's just normal. This is what everyone does. This is why, Veronica, you just need to figure out, not like the hangover bit, that like if you just figure out this bit where you don't feel so much shame and depression and all that, then it's just normal. And one thing I want to say is, so your whole worldview changes, right? You have to dismantle this worldview, and it goes through several evolutions. You have to go through all this process of like the grief and the, what am I going to do for fun and all that kind of stuff. And I find it interesting when I see people decades later still holding on to that same worldview, and they're sort of, I don't know how to put this, like their lives have gone all right, did get married, or they had kids, or they've bought a house or whatever. But I sometimes think it could have gone a lot better if you didn't have this substance in your life. So they sort of, I guess, figured out a way to manage it. But from my distance, it just doesn't look like attractive, and it doesn't look like, it looks like their lives could have been a lot more sparklier and successful and fulfilling without this thing that just takes up so much room.
Absolutely.
So, and I think a lot of people live like that, in this sort of, I don't know,
go on.
It's less, okay, I'll just say it. I feel like they're settling for less than what life had on offer.
God, yes. Oh my God. I mean, you've only got to see somebody 6 months into sobriety and the changes that they've gone through. But I was just thinking, and I don't know whether this is either going to go down well or stands up, but I do think there's a gender difference in how people deal with having a sort of internal knowledge that they might have an alcohol problem. I think men defend it aggressively by they're getting loud or boisterous, and I think women sink into shame. And I think they internalize shame, and it becomes unbearable and requires more and more alcohol. And I think men tend to be more verbally aggressive about it. They'll fight back about it. And I don't know whether that stands up to anything. But the thing is that everybody, as we said right at the start, the person with the problem is probably going to be the last person to know. It is not going to be a shock to anybody that you've come into contact with who isn't part of your circle. Because what we do is, of course, is we gravitate towards, it's called, in the criteria, it's called the narrowing of your social repertoire. whereby you gravitate towards places and people who make your drinking look all right. So you're able to say, everybody drinks like me, because of course you only go to places where people do drink like you, because otherwise you look really odd, you know. So you gravitate towards places where, you know,
Mirrors.
yeah,
We want mirrors.
we want mirrors.
You're absolutely, the worst thing. Oh, I remember this happened to you. The worst thing is going to lunch with someone and they'll have one glass of wine and then no thanks. And I'm like,
yeah.
Like, and then you're like, I need to order a second, and being like all kind of like sort of aware that, I don't know. And maybe I could get the second you can get away with, but the third,
Sure.
right? That person just had a very small glass of wine with their nice food that they're good. I want to order the second bottle. Crap.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the worst.
The wake-up call, it wasn't a wake-up call, I ignored it, but I got a job working on Portobello Road Fruit Market, which meant you got up at sort of 5 o'clock latest, and you were putting the stall out so the stall was ready for 6 o'clock. And, you know, 5, 6, 7, I've been up 5 hours already. And I remember it was on a Saturday morning and the stall was ready. And it was about 10 o'clock, and I'd been up 5 or 6 hours, and I had half a bottle of vodka in my pocket. And I said to the stallholder, "Do you want a drink?" She said, "No, it's 10 o'clock in the morning." And I was really shocked. I thought, yeah, but we've been up 5 hours. It's time for a drink. And he kicked me off the stall straight away. It was a bad social faux pas, that was. It's just that my standards were so completely out of touch with everybody else's. And so when do we know when we are we've got an alcohol problem? I think we probably know internally, but we push it away. We've got little tricks that we play with our mind and we push it away. As we've said endlessly, I've said, other people will know long before it will. If you go to your partner, your parents, your children, whatever it is, and say, "I think I might have a problem with alcohol," you will get met with, "Well, of course you have. We've known for years. You know, we've known this wrong." But how do you, let's say you haven't got the surrounding, like I didn't have contact with my family. The only people I hung around with were people who were using on the street like me. So I didn't have a lot of good positive feedback about my behavior. And I think the only way I found out that I had a problem was somebody who I had used with coming to my house, showing me that it was possible to stop.
Yeah.
And
it's just like Bill W. It's just like Bill W. when he met Evie Thatcher,
it was
isn't
like
it?
that. It was
that
like
was the same for me. That was the same for me. I met a woman, and up until that point in my life, I truly did not know not drinking alcohol was an option.
Exactly.
I didn't know that was an option you could pick. I thought everybody drank, and I was just doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I've been to see people, and I immediately dismissed their opinion as they didn't understand my problems, they didn't understand my background, they didn't understand.
Yeah.
But having somebody standing in front of me who I used to drink and do drugs with, and he looked great.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God. And I remember saying to him, "How did you do that?" And he said, "I gave up drinking and using." And I was like, you're some kind of mystic. You know, how did you come up with that one? That's extraordinary. And, you know, it didn't have an immediate effect, but it really had an impact on me. And then I started a 3 or 4 month period of thinking, well, if he can do it, you know, he did it. He was just like me. And it kind of set off a whole lot of questioning in my mind until it got to the point where I went, yeah, do you know what? I think I do have a problem. I think it's different for everybody. And I think it's, you know, we talk about kind of rock bottom, or, you know, and everybody's waiting for it to get so dreadful that's when they'll realize what a rock bottom is. And they think that means losing your house or, you know, losing your job or whatever. It's something really, really dramatic. But it can be different for everybody. And I know I think I've said this before, but I had a client once whose rock bottom was having to sell one of her horses to pay off a credit card bill. And everybody goes, well, silly. But for her, it was absolutely devastating. The fact that she'd run up such a large credit bill on alcohol secretly, because it was the only way she could get the alcohol. The only way she could pay off the bill was to sell one of her horses, pay a broker. So don't stand around waiting, for a start. If you're listening to this podcast,
I was just going to say that. If you're this far in,
probably know you might have a problem. But, the thing is that I suppose actually one thing you could use this podcast for is to say to people, if you think somebody's got a problem, for God's sake, tell them,
I'm worried about you. I'm worried about you.
Yeah. And, you may get shouted at, but if that person goes on, I mean, it's always that sort of, buyer's remorse. There are people who I know have got a problem. I've told them I think they've got a problem. Whether they take any action or not, I don't know. But I don't want to be the person who hears that they've died or something, or they're ill, and gone, well, I knew that long ago. I knew that 10 years ago, but I didn't say anything.
I think what happens as well is, for a long time, people can be like aware that there's a problem, but they think the problem is their relationship, their job, their parents, their neighbor, their children, their this, their that. For me, I knew I had a problem, and I thought my problem was mental health. It was the anxiety, and I was trying to get help with the anxiety. It never saw any relationship between that and the drinking, or thought that stopping drinking would change that. I just thought if I could get my mental health fixed, then all would be well. And I think that's probably one of the phases people go through and I think sometimes a lot of it is like maybe the job and relationship are possibly big ones.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that's like that you're so stressed, the commute, the pressure, the this, and I mean, I've seen that happen countless times where people have then changed the job, left the job. Oh, and the drinking hasn't changed.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I think we get lost down a lot of dead ends thinking of what the problem is. And it all starts with alcohol. My criteria, I like the one that you said, is it's the people with an alcohol problem do 4 things. They drink, they think about drinking, they think about not drinking, and they recover from drinking. And the biggest one is the thinking about not drinking.
Yeah.
Only that's if you drink, but you think about not drinking, like I'll do dry January, I'll not drink during the week. That for me, red flag, done deal, book a call.
Yeah. Well, I think as you were talking just then, I was thinking I weaponized my family upbringing, my childhood trauma as a reason for what I was doing. And I was very good at weaponizing it and saying, well, if you'd had my background, you'd be drinking, you'd be doing this, And you say, yeah, I mean, but we got different ways of weaponizing, as you said, the stress of work, And we can also make it we can almost gaslight people. What, you're talking to me about drinking? I'm the one who goes out to work every day and brings the money home for this house or whatever it is, So you've got to put up with a bit of domestic abuse or shouting and screaming and not looking after them. That's the price you have to pay to live like this, And but that's when somebody else tells you. I think it's the message we're trying to get across here today is, when do you know? And I think I knew I had a problem, but I was very good. I was immaculate at kind of a microsecond of only thinking I had a problem before I had moved on to
rationalizing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So same thing. I have this distinct memory of being 15 years old, lying in a gutter outside a bar in Thetford, Norfolk, covered in my own vomit, with the landlord throwing a bucket of water over me. The thought that came in was that this is wrong. This is wrong. This is not right. And and a lot of it was my peer group, and I was very susceptible to it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're like the crazy party girl.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be that.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about really, if you want to boil it down, is we have an incredible ability to lie to ourselves as human beings. And we need to understand that. And we do it about everything. I mean, we'll do it about food and money and all. We have an incredible ability to lie and hide the truth from ourselves. But
I mean, I was on a life support machine
twice,
for 3
weren't
days.
you?
Yeah.
Was it an overdose?
Overdose, taking the wrong substances, didn't know what they were, just putting things down me. Blue lit. I was blue lit 4 times, I think. 3 or 4, certainly more than 3, maybe a fourth. Fourth was a cut wrist. But never did I think, I thought this was a bit of adventure. I never thought, even when I would come round from being in a coma for 3 days, and I remember it took me about 24 hours to work out what was going on, discharge myself, take my medical papers, and use those papers as, hey guys, look what's just happened to me. By the way, have you got any drugs on you? You know, it just, our ability to not look at the truth is very, very, it's an incredible, I mean, it's denial, and denial is a absolutely phenomenal manifestation of human behavior. I mean, it's left me with my jaw on the floor at times, running rehabs and things like that. People coming in, stinking of alcohol. They've got half a bottle of vodka sticking out of their pocket, you know, and when did you last have a drink? Had a glass of wine with dinner yesterday. And you're thinking, God, that's such a lie, you know. And they've switched they've got a little switch in their brain that can turn it off and go, right, tell the bullshit story. Because the thing is that I think not everybody recovers from alcohol. Not everybody gets better. You know, the people that often may be listening to this podcast are in the minority. Not many people overcome alcohol problems. That's the dreadful truth. There's an awful lot of people dying. I think in this country, 36,000 people die directly of alcohol poisoning every year. That means that in the course of this podcast, somebody in this country is going to die. And that's a lot of people. Now, how many people get well? How many people get better? How many people stop drinking? I doubt it's 36,000 in the UK. I would think I don't know. I would think it would be about 10,000 people a year get better. That's the trouble. It's not. There's no guaranteed cure. There's no guarantee. Although there's beginning to be a lot of big business, big pharmacy business about we've found the cure for alcohol problems and addiction problems, and that's really big business now. But the fact of the matter is that it is a difficult thing to do, and I think when we are drinking, we probably are aware. We're not aware of the statistics of how many people die and how many people get better. We're not aware of that. But we're aware that it's going to be a challenge. We are aware that we tried on our own, in secret, to stop drinking for a bit, and it's not worked out. We haven't told anybody, but we just sort of one day decided, I'll get through a couple of days. And you found it really difficult. And you started to get the message, God, giving up alcohol is going to be really hard. And I think on your own, it is really hard. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know, because what I'm about to say makes that obvious. But I don't think there are many people who are heavy, heavy drinkers who, on their own, think, I'm drinking too much. I need to stop. I need to temper myself down from alcohol for a little bit, and then I'll be okay. And they remain sober. I don't think there are many of those people. I think most people who get better have either come across somebody who's got sober, or they've heard about somebody getting sober, or they've heard about a podcast, or they've heard about something, and they've started to get help from a doctor or a therapist or a friend or something. But I don't think it's something that a lot of people do entirely on their own. I may be wrong. I don't know, but I'm thinking that.
I think also, but it's not just the amount of people that die. I just think there's a lot of people who live in this, you know, their life is like 60%, right? It's all right. You know, they've got their house, their work.
Yeah.
And 60% is sort of all right. I just, that's the bit that kind of I see more than anything. It's like this compromise. It's like to not give up this toxic relationship. Like they're sort of plodding along all right. Because I guess, I don't know, you have no idea how different it can be. And again, if you're paying your mortgage and you've got go on a holiday once a year, it just feels normal and all right, you know? That's the bit I think that's one of the things that did get me, is like, I don't want to settle. I don't want to settle, and don't want to settle for less than what is on offer. And like I also am very clear, I never would have been able to do that. Like I was never the kind of drunk who would have been able to sort of manage a career and sort of manage a relationship. I couldn't do, like, I would have stayed like minimum wage in very toxic and abusive relationships. Like I wouldn't have been able to get out of that. So and I just think, like, that's the thing, is like, just, you have no idea the contrast and how different it can be. Even if you've got your nice house and your nice car and you go on a nice holiday, like you are settling for so much less than what is possible for you. And if you knew what was possible for you right this second, if Chip and I could show you and go, guess what, if you stop drinking, like, this is what's possible for you in the next like 1 to 5 years, your mind would be blown. Like your literally your circuits would frazzle, because you would not be able to comprehend. Like, because people, I think when they're in that position, it's like all they can feel is like there's an absence of, it'll be less than, and it's the complete opposite. But you kind of got to do that bit on faith.
I mean, when you talk about that, I think if I was living, I don't even think I was living 10% of my capabilities. When I was putting 99% of my capabilities into getting the substances I needed to do what I needed to do, or recovering from it. But I mean, when I look back to where I was and where I am now, the difference is so dramatic. It's beyond, it was beyond my wildest dreams. It was just impossible for me. And, you know, something you said earlier on reminded me about, you know, I hear a lot of parents say, well, look, you know, I said, have you said anything to them? And I said, well, we go and, you know, we had a bit of a shouting match the other day. And I thought, well, I can assure you that whoever that person was, if the price they have to pay for continuing to live in your house and carry on drinking is half an hour at most of having somebody, that's a cheap price to pay. They can pay that price standing on their heads. You know, it needs to be a little bit more dramatic than, I really, really disapprove of what you're doing. Really? Over the head, that's gone. You know, it's got to be, if other people, but as you said, that it's, how do we get the person themselves to sort of recognize? And I would like to see, you know, it's interesting that we've just this second in this country last week, and I know this is slightly off topic, but last week, the first time I've ever heard a radio program about the damage of ketamine. Now, they were talking about it as if it was a new revolution and something that they just discovered. I've known about that for the last 15 years. And wondered why on earth there isn't more publicity about it. And I do think there is something missing in about, you know, every once in a while, somebody will do a documentary about somebody particular who's got an alcohol problem, but they'll be the arse end of drinking. They'll be the person who is sitting on a park bench. And what an interesting life story they had. They were in the military and they did this and this and this. It won't be about the middle class, upper class, whatever bloody class, who are functioning, going to work every day, have got a family. It won't be about them. It'll be about, and those people who are sitting on the park bench, who are such a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of the people who drink excessively in this country, and I'm sure every other country as well. And yet we use those people as the benchmark for, well, when I get to that stage, then I'll really will know I've got a problem. But, you know, this thing, and we've done a podcast about, you know, high functioning people, and that covers most people with a drink problem. It covers, they've got somewhere to live. They may be out of work, but they've got somewhere to live. They're not on the street.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've got an income coming in. It might just be a benefits, but it might be a wage. They've got children. They've got the trappings of normality. But as you said, they're not fulfilling their potential at all, and too much of their effort is going into drinking. But it's really difficult it's such a difficult problem to deal with. And I wish there would be more programs more information about the effects of alcohol. And, you know, there are not many. And there's a move in this country to start putting labels on bottles, rather like they did with cigarettes. And that's, you know, they put very gory images on cigarette packets. And that did have a big impact, and cigarette smoking is now very rare. I mean, everybody's vaping their heads off, but still imbibing nicotine like nobody's business. Oh no, I don't. I hear a lot of people go, "I'm not drinking. I'm not drinking." I mean, I'm not smoking.
But they vape.
Vaping, and it's nicotine. It's the same thing. You know, no, it's different. It's vaping. But you're addicted to nicotine. But no, so that was a complete diversion. But
I think what I want to say is, like, it's the thinking about not drinking. It's if you're Googling stuff, you're listening to podcasts, all that kind of stuff. That's the biggest giveaway. But I think, how do I know when it's time to stop drinking? If you take a very clear-eyed look, all of the evidence is there. It's all there, right in front of you. And that is the hardest thing for us to do.
Yeah.
The evidence. And the other thing is, I want to say is, well, why don't you just quit for a year? Why don't you, there's probably decades of drinking ahead of you. Alcohol's never going to go away. Why don't you just, and I don't mean just stop drinking for a year. Why don't you stop drinking for a year and do some really good work on yourself, like personal development, join a program, see a therapist, do work really hard on yourself. And then you will have a contrast. What is the last 12 months? You know, it's funny. I have to, this makes me laugh. I have a Facebook friend. I don't want to say too much. Every so often they do this. They quit alcohol for 100 days for charity. And they posted, and they're like halfway through, and they're like, yeah, doing great, going strong, sleeping better, feeling better. And I'm like, like, can you see it? Like, why would you volunteer to go back to not having those things?
Yeah.
Like, it was like getting loads done. And everyone's like, yeah, mate, not long to go. And I'm like, that, right? So you want to stop feeling great, sleeping better, getting stuff done, going and doing all these things at the weekend. Like, literally, that was the post. And I'm like, that for me, that's the art. You want to lose that and go back to, I don't know what.
That is something I really do struggle with, is people whose lives have got markedly better.
Yeah.
And I understand that, you know, trauma and some of the things that come to light and the emotional difficulties of things that come to light when you stop drinking are difficult. But, you know, almost immediately things start to get better when you stop drinking. Almost immediately. And yet people still choose to go back. They look on it as a preferable choice after many, many years. But it's a conundrum. And I hope that, you know,
hopefully this will have moved someone a square
just to have
along.
a little bit more look. Have a look at divine, you know, how does it affect your work life, your social life, your leisure life, your domestic life, your relationship life? Just have a look at those areas. How does alcohol affect them? And if it's you know, if it's more than a little bit, then you need to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. Let us know what you think about the podcast. Hopefully this helps. Give us a quick rating on whatever app you listen, and we will be back soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I dreamt that you were twisted through 7 suns of gold.